Hey guys, welcome back. I'm late tonight, 6 o'clock, but not too many of you watch this live anyway, so I don't think it probably matters that much when I do it. But I can't tell based on Facebook. I've not dug in on the statistics, but these are ultimately getting between 70 and 80 something views most of the videos. So I don't know if it's just popping across your screen and you're like, get rid of it. Or if there's some people actually on this journey with us. But in any case, it's fun stuff. It's helpful for me sometimes just to talk through things. So I'm going to be preaching on Balaam. I was talking about him yesterday on Sunday. I decided to kind of share some of the gems we're learning here along the way. But I'm realizing that Balaam is a little bit more to Balaam kind of negatively than maybe it seems. So if you do a search on Balaam, he pops up 3 or 4 or 5 times throughout the rest of the Bible after this book, and none of them are positive. He even pops up in the book of Revelation. So how interesting is that? So do a search for Balaam if you want to kind of learn some more about how he's perceived in the biblical narrative, the biblical tradition beyond this. So I'm doing some research, and again, as I've said, for the most part, I'm not doing research for these day by day, which there's some exceptions to that. Sometimes I've done a little bit of looking, but these are not formulated teaching videos where I've kind of done all my homework. This is me reading, and I've said that before, but it's been a few weeks since I've kind of reiterated that. This is me kind of engaging with this text, kind of where I'm at. So there's some things that I know because I do a lot of reading and study. There's a lot that I don't know because I've not really immersed myself directly in these books very much at all. So it's some of it for me is kind of processing certain things, for the first time or for the first time in any kind of depth. So again, I'm going to get things wrong. I'm processing things. There's going to be things that I miss too. So we're on this journey together. You'll see things perhaps that I won't see, and that's great. That's just kind of how it works. And so it's tricky because I'm both when I know something that comes that feels like a connection, I want to kind of throw it out there for consideration, and at the same time, I want to kind of live in the story as it's unfolding and not only think about what's going to be different or changed later. So I'm kind of juggling those balls as we go through this, kind of wanting to do all the things at the same time. And also sometimes the daily readings, what I'm focusing on is kind of bleeding into each other. So if there's a lot in any given day's reading, sometimes I'll kind of stop short and I may or may not talk about the tail end of the reading in the next day, like I'm going to kind of do today. And I may kind of stop short. Again, this is not comprehensive in the day's reading. It's the things that just I want to talk about. They seem interesting to me, or I want to kind of wrestle with them with you, kind of throw out some things there just for our kind of back and forth thinking there together. So if you want to share comments in the moment or later, feel free to do that. Happy to engage with them. And again, even if you see things differently, that's fine. Let's talk about it. So we were in Balaam yesterday. Immediately following that in chapter 25, I think was officially a part of yesterday's reading. Yeah, we're in 27 through 30 is our official reading for today. I probably, as typically has been the case, I probably will not do a video on tomorrow, Saturday. On Monday, what I'll do is a Numbers wrap-up video. That's our last official reading day in Numbers. Remember, Sunday is a day off, so if you're behind, it's a great day to catch up. And remember, you don't have to print read. You can listen to audio. You can catch up with that quick. I know some of you are principled against that, but if you're wrong if you want to do the reading but aren't able to do the reading, then do listening. If you just want to read, and you're able to read, that's great. That's perfect. But if you want to do it and can't do it, but you say, well, I don't like audio, well, it's better to do something than to do nothing. That's my take. So, okay. Numbers chapter 25, Moab seduces Israel. So this is big stuff. It's hard stuff because there's death penalty things kind of happening here, and where I don't know. I've not had a lot of questions yet about kind of wrestling with some of the severity of some of these things, but it's hard to read these texts and not see the severity of consequences at times with things that are going on here. So let me read a couple verses in chapter 25. While Israel was staying in Shittim, the men began to indulge in sexual immorality with the Moabite women, who invited them to the sacrifices to their gods. There's some interesting things here. It's not evident in the text, but I'm doing some secondary reading in that some of the sacrifices that Balaam, so this is kind of one of the things that speaks more negatively towards Balaam, is remember as he's going along to these different places here, he's having Balak the king do all these sacrifices. Well, one of the things that's happening because of that is the sacrifices are getting closer to Israel. And these sacrifices aren't sacrifices to Yahweh, I don't think. That's not the idea. In any case, whatever you want to do with that, there's sacrifices to gods other than Yahweh, and that's a big problem, right? 10 Commandments, etc., other reiteration, we do not do that. And so that's happening. And it's a combination. And this is interesting, too, about we will have more to come kind of prohibition against intermarrying and that kind of thing. And so why? Is it because God doesn't like other people besides his people? No, that's not the case. How do we know that's not the case? Because, well, a couple reasons. One, God's covenant promise to Abraham is that ultimately all the nations will be blessed through him and his descendants. But also we've seen again and again and again and again throughout these narratives provisions and instructions for the foreigner living among them. So people who are not a part of the 12 tribes of Israel, who are living with them, there's all kinds of provision made that they are going to participate in the sacrificial system. They're going to have also kind of rights and benefits along with the people to be treated justly and fairly, right? But these are people, I think it's pretty clear, these are people who are not bringing other gods with them to entice, is I think sometimes the word, Israel. It's not about, so sometimes other nations, a lot of times are going to be enticing them to worship the way that they worship, to practice morality the way that they do. And that's a huge problem. But it's not a problem to have people from other nations wanting to come and worship Yahweh God and live his way amongst his people. That's good. But bringing in pagan worship and morality is bad. And so that's the discernment, okay? And I think, so again, give me some feedback if you're seeing something different than that. So there's some questions kind of underneath here. Is this sexual immorality? Is this just sex, or is there's kind of different like cultic sexual practices that were the case in the ancient world, where it could have been a combination of sexual things with idolatrous worship things. And so there's some potentially bigger I don't know, a multiplicity of concerns that are going on here. But in any case, one issue, we'll see this later with like Solomon, King Solomon, David's son, right? Very important figure later in the story. But he has all these wives from all these places, and they lead him astray into worship of these gods. So there's this thing like, sex has this powerful thing of it can lead us not only astray in its own right, but also to adopt other practices. So okay, there we have that. So the people ate the sacrificial meal, so they're eating food sacrificed to other gods. right? And they bowed down before these gods. Like, this is huge. This is the ultimate no-no prohibition. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me. And that's not necessarily just ranked, but well, that's a big conversation. But in any case, this is it. This is bad. So verse 3, so Israel yoked themselves. Interesting, this term, right? We see it different places throughout the scripture. Jesus talks about his yoke, but it's this. We see Paul brings this up in Corinth. His correspondence there with do not be yoked to unbelievers. So this kind of even gives some background to even that concept. This kind of intimate relationship connection with different priorities, different values in this circumstance. So Israel yoked themselves to the Baal or Baal of Peor. Baal or Baal, however you want to pronounce it. Baal is probably the better pronunciation, but Baal is the way we typically say it. And there's no secret about how God feels. The Lord's anger burned against them, right? So this is big. This is bad. The Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of these people, kill them, and expose them in broad daylight. Okay, so this is big. Like, this is death penalty stuff in this moment in time, and make an example, right, sort of them maybe. So okay, here's something else that's going on here. So here's a particular example, and then a response. And this is interesting as we go on in the biblical story. Verse 6, then an Israelite man brought into the camp a Midianite woman right before the eyes of Moses and the whole assembly of Israel while they were weeping at the entrance to the tent of meeting, right? So he is kind of boldly or brazenly just flaunting this in front of everyone. And again, this could be, there's a lot of things that this could be, but it could be ritual, sexual, pagan things, not just, hey, I found a wife from somewhere else, kind of thing. So we have this character in verse 7, chapter 25, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron. So this is Aaron's grandson. Remember, right before Aaron dies, his son Eleazar kind of takes over for him in this head priest kind of role. His son Phinehas, he's a priest, right? So he sees this. He left the assembly, took a spear in his hand, and followed this guy into his tent. He drove the spear into both of them, right through the Israel. This is not going to be the last graphic scene that we have here in Scripture. Right through the Israelite man and into the woman's stomach. So I think the idea here is they're actually perhaps in the act of having sex in this moment, perhaps in this pagan ritual kind of way. Again, this is background stuff. It's not evident in the text of Scripture itself. Then the plague against the Israelites was stopped, but those who died in the plague numbered 24,000. That's a lot of people. But here's the thing. This is going to be the last of the generation that God said is going to die in the wilderness. This is kind of finishing off that season, which we'll see here kind of quickly as we go forward. So this is really interesting. Verse 10, the Lord said to Moses, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, has turned away my anger from the Israelites, since he was zealous for my honor among them as I am. I did not put an end to them in my zeal. Therefore tell him I am making my covenant of peace with him. He and his descendants will have a covenant of a lasting priesthood, because he was zealous for the honor of his God and made atonement for the Israelites. So the idea, the word here is behind the his anger is wrath. So Phineas turned away God's wrath and what he did. So this is interesting because it'll become kind of paradigmatic. So in the intertestamental period, the Maccabees, who used violence to kind of get back the nation, so to speak, will look to Phineas as an example of this. This perhaps, possibly, probably is behind Saul's persecution of God's people. Now, that's really backwards. Well, we'll get to that way in the future because he's actually working against God. They're not working for God. But as I've said before, it's interesting because I don't know. There's just a lot going on here, and I don't want to repeat every thing every kind of day. Okay, so another census. We had census going on early in the book of Numbers. We have census going on later in the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers means in the wilderness. This is the wilderness wandering in between, or in the midst of God's unfaithfulness. Not God's unfaithfulness. That's backwards. The people's unfaithfulness, right? And God's declaration that those who didn't trust him would not enter the promised land. And so there's another census that kind of demonstrates, as it concludes, that that those who are left are the next generation, the ones who God said you will go into the land, not the ones that wouldn't. So in chapter 26, verse 64. Wow, a lot of verses in here, right? Not one of them, this is at the conclusion of the census, right? Which is the kind of the more, whatever, to us seemingly boring parts, but it has purpose. It does have a purpose, or multiple purposes, perhaps. Not one of them was among those counted by Moses and Aaron the priest when they counted the Israelites in the desert of Sinai. So now they're in the desert across. They're in the plain across from Jericho. They're ready to enter the promised land. Before they're at the beginning of the journey. Now they're at the end, and not one of those there. So basically, what this means is that what God had said as the consequence is now kind of fulfilled. And they are theoretically ready now to enter the promised land. The right people are there for this journey, right? So God is faithful. God is faithful. It's part of what I mistakenly said a minute ago, both in his covenant commitment and in his consequence statements. That they're both are the case. So okay, I want to wrap up here quickly. Just a couple more thoughts here that we need to point out. Chapter 27 is interesting because these daughters who don't have there's no more male descendants, right, in their family. They say, well, hey, the situation is this way, but there's no, all our brothers are dead. And so there's a provision, there's flexibility. That's cool. Think about that. At the end of chapter 27 is really interesting because this is the handoff. And I'll end here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the offerings again, but I want to stop short today, and I'll think about what I do and don't want to talk about on Monday, but that'll take as long as it takes to kind of cover what I want to cover to kind of wrap up Numbers for that. So this conclusion with Moses and Numbers. Verse 12, the Lord said to Moses, go up on this mountain and see the land that I have given the Israelites. So God, I don't think this is a rub it in thing. Maybe it is. But I think even though Moses, now remember, isn't going to get to enter the promised land, and yet God allows him to at least see it. Okay, I think this is good, a provision, not a whatever thing. And he reminds him of the why. But I like Moses' thing. Moses is not throwing a pity party here. Moses is not whining about his own situation. He's, as far as he's never complained about it. As far as we know, he's okay. I mean, which I don't know. Deuteronomy's coming. We get some more Moses. So if you think Moses is done, you got a whole other book with a lot of Moses. So stay tuned for that. What is Moses' concern? It's not with himself, it's with the people. This guy, I mean, he's got faults. He ain't perfect. But his concern, he's a good shepherd in the sense of that he's concerned for the people, not just himself. And so what does he want? He wants God to appoint someone else to lead him so that the Lord's people will not be like a sheep without a shepherd. Oh my goodness. And so Joshua gets appointed, right? So Jesus, I mean, the shepherd's going to be a whole prophetic theme in all through story, but Jesus looks out at the people and says he feels for them because they're like sheep without a shepherd. So Moses right here is, I don't know, I'm impressed with him. Moses, oh, he's very human like us, but his concern again at the end is not for himself, not pity party, but for the future of the people that he's led. I think there's a growth path in Moses. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? All right, I'm going to wrap up now, and I'll see you Monday. Bye.